He felt the ground tremble under his boots, not from movement but from memory, as if the earth itself was trying to push a forgotten truth up through the dust. And in that moment, he understood that he was standing on the threshold of a disappearance so clean, so absolute, it defied everything history believed it knew. Before this journey unfolds, tell me, where are you watching from? What time is it right now? And make sure you like, share, and subscribe so this story reaches everyone who still believes mysteries deserve answers. The desert wind moved across the abandoned riverbed like a whisper from a world that refused to die. Sand drifted against fallen brick, sliding across the geometric remnants of a civilization too advanced, too organized, too disciplined to have faded without leaving a scream behind. Yet all that remained was silence. Silence so deep it pulled Armin Hale forward like a magnet. He walked slowly, reverently, through the skeletal grid of Calibangan, feeling the shape of forgotten streets beneath his feet. Everything here had been carved with intention. Everything aligned, everything planned. And yet nothing explained why millions of people had simply vanished as though they stepped out of history and closed the door behind them. He brushed the dust from an ancient seal, revealing strange, elegant symbols that the world still could not read. The grooves were sharp despite the passage of 4,000 years. His fingers traced the lines as if they might twitch and speak, as if they might reveal the last thoughts of the people who once ruled these lands without kings, without wars, without chaos. That alone unsettled him. Civilizations thrived on conflict, religion, ego. But the Indus people built their world on precision and quiet order. He wondered how a society so peaceful, so uniform, so advanced could collapse without leaving even a shadow of its own downfall. The more he walked, the more the ruins felt less like ruins and more like a paused world, as if time had stopped mid-sentence. Streets formed perfect right angles. Drainage channels ran beneath the main roads with mathematical consistency. Wells appeared at exact intervals, spaced like the beats of a steady pulse. Houses built with standardized bricks, each brick nearly identical in size, composition, and weight. No grand tombs, no imposing temples, no ostentatious palaces demanding reverence. Only simple, equal structures, suggesting a civilization where the collective mattered more than any individual. He paused at the threshold of what was once a home. A soft breeze moved through the hollow doorway, stirring dust into the fading sunlight. He imagined the life that once filled this space, the steady rhythm of everyday tasks, grain ground by hand, clay pots lined against the walls, children playing with terracotta toys, traders returning with goods from distant lands. No signs of fear, no desperation. Only life lived in a pattern as steady as the rain cycles that fed their rivers. But when the rivers changed, everything did. He stood with his eyes half closed, picturing the mighty Sarasvati flowing with glacier-borne force across these plains. A river so vast it had shaped cities, fields, farms, and futures. But rivers were living beings, unpredictable, shifting with the whims of climate, tectonics, and time. When Sarasvati began to dry, it was as if the civilization's heart had faltered. Still, Armin felt this wasn't enough. Rivers dried elsewhere. Civilizations adapted, fought, fragmented, evolved. But the Indus people didn't leave behind a trail of transformation. They left nothing. Their script vanished. Their identity dissolved. Their voices disappeared. Something about that felt intentional. He climbed a mound overlooking the ruins, the wind wrapping around him like a cloak. The horizon glowed with dying light, the sky turning a molten gold that mirrored the ancient brick below. From above, the city looked like a puzzle missing its final piece. Everything was structured. Everything was synchronized. Everything hinted at a knowledge deeper than archaeology allowed. Footsteps approached behind him. Rhea appeared beside him, her expression mirroring the quiet awe he wore. The city's stillness touched her too, pressing into her bones like a memory she had never lived but somehow recognized. They gazed together at the grid below. Rhea murmured about drought cycles, climate shifts, the inevitable decline of a river-based civilization. He listened, but the explanations felt too shallow for a disappearance so complete. He imagined the last days of Calibangan, markets slowly emptying, wells producing less water, families watching the river recede, the sky shifting, offering to little rain. But he also imagined something else, something unspoken, something deliberate. The people were too intelligent, too organized, too forward-thinking to let their entire identity dissolve naturally. He believed they had hidden something, a message, a truth, a code. When night finally crept across the desert, they returned to their tent near the excavation site. Stars scattered across the sky like grains of quartz embedded in black stone. Arman unrolled a map of the ancient Indus world, tracing the river channels, city grids, trade routes. His finger followed the extinct path of the Sarasvati River. He felt a strange grief for a river he had never seen. He examined images of seals, the unicorn-like bull, poised before a ceremonial stand, symbols arranged above it like an equation. Another seal bore a tiger, another an elephant. Each image precise, standardized, repeated across thousands of miles. This was not randomness. This was not decorative art. This was language encoded in imagery, concepts carried through symbols, being woven into metaphor. His theory unfolded like a quiet storm inside him. The Indus script wasn't phonetic. It didn't represent speech. It represented ideas, deep ones, cultural ones, universal ones. If their worldview collapsed, then the lens needed to decode the script vanished with it. The knowledge stayed. The understanding did not. He imagined the civilization facing climate shifts, social stress, migration pressures. Instead of resisting, perhaps they dispersed. Not in panic, but in grace, carrying their knowledge inward instead of outward, choosing transformation over survival, choosing silence over conquest, choosing disappearance over corruption. He imagined them walking away from history before history could distort them. Rhea watched him analyze the seals, reading the growing certainty in his eyes. She saw how deeply the mystery gripped him. The Indus civilization was not just a puzzle to him, it was a living question. A question about humanity itself. About how societies choose to remember or choose to vanish. They fell into a thoughtful quiet, the desert outside humming softly. A faint vibration trembled beneath the soil, so slight it escaped their senses. A second tremor followed, softer still, then faded. If they had felt it, they might have wondered why the earth beneath a long-dead city was shifting again. Arman finally folded the map. Tomorrow, they would travel to Mohenjo-Daro, the city of mounds, the ancient metropolis that once stood as the crown jewel of the Indus world. A city so precisely designed that even today it felt futuristic in its logic. A place where the end of the civilization was written in dust, waiting for someone bold enough to read between the ruins. As they drifted toward sleep, neither sensed the slow awakening beneath the earth. Something buried deep, deeper than bricks, deeper than bones, deeper than memory, stirred with the faintest pulse, as if reacting to their presence. As if waiting for the next step in the story the world had forgotten, but the land had not. The sky over Mohenjo-Daro carried the pale blue of early morning, soft and muted like a memory refusing to sharpen. Arman stepped onto the ancient bricks with a reverence normally reserved for holy ground. Each layer beneath him held stories that had once pulsed with life. The city stretched outward in deliberate lines, arranged with the same eerie precision that had haunted every Indus site he'd ever walked. But Mohenjo-Daro felt different. It felt heavier, as if the air itself clung to secrets too long sealed beneath the ruins. The great bath lay ahead, its sunken brick basin still outlined with proud geometry, defying the years that tried to unravel it. Armand stood at the edge of the platform and looked down into the massive tank, imagining water shimmering inside it thousands of years ago. Rituals unfolding, people gathering. Silence built not from emptiness, but from meaning. The sun lit the edges of the structure, turning the bricks into a mosaic of amber and gold. He felt as if the city breathed here, as if the water once held in this place had carried not just reflection, but identity. Ria joined him at the platform, her footsteps muffled by the warm morning air. She was studying the layout of the surrounding structures, tracing invisible lines that connected wells, drains, and streets. The puzzle grew more complex the deeper they explored. Every part of the city connected with intention, as though designed by minds that understood the subtle mathematics of society. The absence of hierarchy echoed here as loudly as in Kalibangan. Houses shared similar designs. Streets maintained consistent widths. No palace loomed above the common homes. No king carved his name into stone. The city existed as a single organism, every part working in harmony, leaving behind no single figure to claim its legacy. Armand walked the length of the platform, absorbing the vastness of the ruins. Mohenjo-Daro had once thrived with tens of thousands of people. Workshops, markets, streets alive with voices carrying stories that the world never recorded. Now it was a city suspended between recognition and oblivion, trapped in a silence that refused to break. The wind moved through the ancient bricks like breath through the lungs of a sleeping giant. He descended toward a cluster of houses that lined the lower part of the city. Some structures bore signs of fire, though not enough to suggest war or invasion. More likely isolated accidents, the kind any thriving city would experience. Broken seals lay scattered near doorways. Pottery fragments gleamed faintly in the dust. A copper tool lay half-buried near what once might have been a workshop. Everything felt suddenly intimate, as if stepping into daily life rather than an ancient graveyard. He imagined waking in this city at dawn, thousands of years ago, the hum of life rising with the sun. Merchants preparing goods, children rushing through narrow streets, artisans shaping beads with microscopic precision. Priests, if priests even existed in this society, carrying water toward the great bath. The rhythm of life steady, constant, without the turbulence that marked so many other civilizations of its era. Yet all of it had vanished with a quiet so unnatural it felt orchestrated. Ria called him over to a long, narrow street that led toward the industrial sector of the city. She crouched beside a massive brick kiln, still intact despite the centuries. Heat once radiated from this chamber, feeding the production of pottery, bricks, and possibly even early forms of metalwork. The air around it carried the faint echo of labor. The ghost of hands shaping clay with skill passed through generations. Armand stepped into the kiln's shadow, gazing around the industrial region. There were more kilns, more workshops, more signs of systematized production. This was a city that understood scale, understood organization, understood that societies rose on the backs of infrastructure. The people here weren't merely surviving, they were thriving. He felt the old question pressing against his ribs again. How could a civilization capable of such sophistication disintegrate so neatly that no successor inherited its identity? They moved deeper into the city. As they walked, Armand felt an undercurrent running through the ruins, a sense that something had fractured but not died. The deeper they went, the stronger the feeling became. It was as if they were walking through the preserved thoughts of people who had once moved with purpose and unity. Ria stopped beside a wide staircase descending into another basin. She knelt to examine the bricks lining the structure. Still sharp, still fitted with uncanny precision. She looked around, slowly turning as if measuring the air. Armand felt the same thing she did before she voiced it. A presence, not a person, not a spirit. A presence of memory, a weight of intention. This city had not died in chaos. It had been put to rest. They continued through the upper citadel, approaching a cluster of storage rooms. Remnants of grain bins lined the area, their layouts still clear, despite erosion. Armin imagined workers filling them with harvested crops, organizing resources that kept the society stable through monsoon cycles. These people understood planning on a level unmatched in their time. Their governance was invisible, yet unmistakable. A silent system that left no records but revealed itself through action. He touched one of the brick walls and felt warmth radiating through it from the morning sun. A symbol was faintly carved near the edge, worn by time but recognizable as part of the same script that haunted every Indus site. He traced it with his thumb, feeling the ghost of the artisan who had carved it. The symbol was a clue. One piece of a language built on a conceptual foundation the modern world no longer understood. He thought again of the seals he'd studied until his vision blurred, each one repeating motifs that transcended distance and time. A civilization that spanned 1,000,000 square kilometers maintained a symbolic language with astonishing consistency. It spoke of unity that modern societies struggled to achieve. That unity made their disappearance even more baffling. Rhea found a shard of pottery bearing a faint animal engraving. The same stylized bull that appeared on countless seals. She held it up, the bull's form catching the morning light. Not a real animal. It's not a simple symbol. Something more profound. A code. A message. A concept wrapped in metaphor. She placed the shard gently back in the dust, as if returning it to its rightful resting place. Armin's mind raced with the fragments of his theory. The Indus script likely represented concepts rather than phonetic sounds. Each symbol might have carried layers of meaning: social, spiritual, mathematical, environmental. Understanding one symbol might require understanding its relationship to the others. A language built like a matrix rather than a linear sequence. If that was true, then the script wasn't undeciphered. It was waiting for a mind capable of perceiving it as its creators did. A civilization so unified might have encoded its identity in a system that only made sense within their worldview. When that worldview fractured, the key to the script vanished. They moved toward the lower town, where the largest clusters of houses stood. The uniformity here was even more striking. Homes arranged in perfect rows, streets forming straight lines that intersected at deliberate angles. Drains running beneath sidewalks with brickwork so advanced it resembled modern engineering. He stepped into one of the largest homes, its floor plan still visible, a central courtyard, rooms branching outward. A well, a private bath. Signs of comfort, stability, and a level of cleanliness unheard of anywhere else in the ancient world. If decline approached, the people here did not show panic. They lived in order until the final moment. He pictured their final day, the air too dry, the monsoon too weak, the wells producing water tinged with the bitterness of dwindling aquifers, the river shrinking year after year, crops failing, trade routes fracturing. Perhaps they held meetings in these courtyards, discussing the changing world. Perhaps they agreed to leave together, not in fear, but in acceptance. A collective decision to disperse rather than decay. He imagined caravans moving east, families walking away from a city they built with devotion, taking their knowledge with them but letting the physical city rest. No violence, no disaster, only a quiet retreat. A civilization stepping out of its own story. Rhea called him over to a collapsed staircase. Beneath the rubble lay something faintly glimmering in the dust. He crouched and brushed the area with careful strokes until the outline of a seal emerged. It was nearly intact. A unicorn bull stood poised before a ceremonial stand. Above it, symbols arranged in a pattern he'd seen before but never this clearly. The engraving was deep, deliberate, meant to be read across centuries. He held it gingerly. The weight of it felt almost alive. He held the seal against the sunlight, watching the symbols cast shadows onto the ancient bricks beneath them. The shadows aligned in straight, clean lines, forming yet another pattern he hadn't seen before. His breath hitched, not from fear, but from recognition. The symbols aligned not randomly but intentionally, forming a sequence that connected perfectly with the layout of the city itself. He felt his pulse quicken. The seal wasn't just a record of identity or trade. It was a map, conceptual map of the city. It's a map of knowledge encoded within architecture, symbolism, and alignment. The Indus script wasn't just a language, it was a system. He stood, gripping the seal, eyes wide with revelation. The silence of Mohenjo-Daro wasn't the silence of collapse. It was the silence of a mechanism waiting to be activated. A code built into the city, into the symbols, into the very layout of the civilization. Ria's eyes widened as she realized the same thing. The seal in Armin's hand was not just a clue, it was a key. The tremor came again, stronger this time, rumbling through the ground in a steady pulse. And now, standing in the heart of Mohenjo-Daro, holding the seal that connected everything, he realized he had just opened the first door. The ground trembled again, this time with unmistakable intention. Not destruction, recognition. Something beneath Mohenjo-Daro had been waiting, and it had finally felt the touch of someone who understood its language. The tremor subsided as quickly as it had risen, leaving a thin veil of dust drifting through the morning light. Armin stood in the center of the ancient street, seal clutched in his hand, heart pounding with the weight of a revelation that felt older than the bricks beneath his feet. The air had changed. He felt it as surely as he felt the sunlight on his skin. Something beneath Mohenjo-Daro had awakened, not violently. Not with the hunger of something buried too long, but with the slow, deliberate stir of a memory recognizing its name. Ria's gaze scanned the ground beneath them, her breath shallow but steady. Yet beneath the erosion lay the unmistakable geometry of Indus engineering. Clean lines, deliberate proportions, symmetry woven into every brick. A wide platform jutted outward from the ruins, half buried beneath layers of sand. Armin brushed away the dust with his foot, revealing a mosaic of faint symbols carved into the stone. Circles, intersecting lines, geometric shapes arranged with the same grace that defined the entire civilization. But these symbols differed from those on the seals. They weren't personal marks or trade identifiers. The fit was perfect, too perfect to be coincidence. The mosaic responded instantly, a soft shimmer rippling across its surface like water disturbed by wind. Light followed the lines of the carvings, igniting the pattern until it formed a glowing web beneath their feet. The tremor returned, this time deeper, resonating through the ground with a steady, rhythmic pulse. It felt like a heartbeat. Armand steadied himself, breath caught in his chest. The light spread outward, tracing the platform's edges, then branching into the surrounding ruins. Dust lifted from cracks. Sand shifted. The ancient stones hummed with a frequency felt more than heard. It was as though the city had become a network awakening segment by segment, each part remembering its role in a system dormant for millennia. Rhea stepped back as the light concentrated beneath the seal. The platform vibrated gently. The stones beneath them loosened, rotating in a circular motion that revealed a descending shaft where solid ground had once been. A cool, ancient draft rose from the depths, carrying the scent of earth untouched by time. The opening widened slowly, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling into darkness. Armand stared at the hidden passage, feeling the gravity of the moment sink into his bones. This was the truth buried beneath generations of speculation. The Indus Valley Civilization had not vanished without cause. It had retreated, concealed, encoded itself into the earth until a time when its knowledge could be safely uncovered. Rhea began the descent first, her steps deliberate, her breath steady. Armand followed, seal in hand, each step echoing faintly through the spiral chamber. Faint symbols began to glow in synchronized rhythm, casting shifting light across the chamber. The sight stole Armand's breath. Shelves carved into the stone held rows upon rows of objects, seals, tablets, tools, artifacts not yet touched by time. Walls bore inscriptions in the Indus script, preserved with clarity no surface ruin had retained. The chamber was an archive, a vault of memory designed not for burial but for preservation. But at the center of the chamber stood something even more extraordinary, a massive circular stone table engraved with complex patterns. Each symbol interconnected with others in an intricate web. The entire structure hummed with soft illumination, as though powered by a source that defied decay. Armand felt chills run through him as the images morphed again. They showed artisans teaching nomadic tribes, farmers traveling east to share their irrigation techniques, traders heading west with new seeds, knowledge radiating outward like light from a central flame.